everyone. Welcome. I am Briar Harvey. This is the Neurodiversity Media Network, and I'm super excited for this show. All right, y'all. We have spoken with Ryan before. I will link that show in the show notes. But the upshot of this particular masterclass, the Not Normal Fitness podcast, is that neurodivergent people do fitness differently. The way that we internalize routine, habit building, all of those things are fundamentally different when you're wired a little bit differently. We don't always have the capacity to do the same thing every day. We don't always have the capacity to stick to a routine. And sometimes we'll start a habit, do it for a decade, and then not do it one day and never be able to do it again. Just neurodivergent things. So when it comes to health and wellness and taking care of the meat sack that you've got for the remainder of your lifetime, we wanted to talk about how to create those habits and routines in a sustainable way that's not based around shame and guilt. And I wanted Ryan to do it because he's one of us, first of all, but because he also used to be one of us, very physically one of us. So, Ryan, introduce yourself. Tell us your story.
Hey, everybody. Ryan here. My company is Spike Fitness, and I'm really excited to do this Not Normal Fitness podcast. So, a lot about me is... my fitness journey started with a picture, right? Like it started with someone taking a picture of me and a friend of mine, and he was like, hey, it was at the time I was a chef and I was catering an event. And he was like, hey, thanks for catering our event. And he posted that picture on Facebook, and I saw that picture and I was like, oh no, like something has to change, right? Like it was just that. I was about 100 pounds heavier. I was about 260 pounds. I'm not very tall, so I was substantially overweight at the time, right? And like I leaned into that because I was a chef, right? The old adage of never trust a skinny chef was very real. I was a great chef. I am a great chef. But that's how my fitness journey started. And like so many of us, it wasn't easy for me to like figure all these things out, right? Like people would be like, oh, you just have to do X, Y, Z. And I would be like, yeah, but none of that makes any sense to me at all. Right? And I had to figure out my own way, and that was my own challenge. And I asked friends, and they would be like, oh, I just did this thing because I've been fit my entire life. And I was like, yeah, but that's unreasonable. And so I learned what it took for me to lose the weight. To come full circle, I'm now a pro national bodybuilder, and I'm doing my pro debut in a couple of months at a competition. And so it's really come full circle for me, right? And somewhere in that process, I decided to shift careers and start doing this for a living and start helping others on their journey, right? Because one, I liked being in the gym all day. It was much better than a kitchen. And two, it was really interesting to watch the way people interacted with me and the way life changed around me as I changed. And then as I learned to become a trainer and work with other trainers, to see how hard it is for someone who's been fit their entire life to explain to someone who's never been fit what it's like, right? And like I realized I had bridged that gap myself, and so I could really like explain to people and understand to people in an honest, realistic way that doesn't involve, like Briar said, guilt and shame and things that will set you back. And that really was just like the motivating driver. And so I really want to talk about like figuring out the first step, I think, in every fitness journey, and I think it's really overlooked for a lot of people. A lot of people have these like goals in mind, whether it's like lose 10 pounds, get more muscular, run a 10K, whatever arbitrary goal they decide to set for themselves, which are all great. If you tend to skip the first step, which is why do you want that goal, right? And so clearly defining that why is such a big misstep, I think. And so I actually wrote a small book about it, wrote an ebook about it. We put the sign up for the mailing list below at the end of the show, where you can sign up and get the free book about discovering your why, and it steps to break it down and help you figure out where to get started from. And I really feel that once you have that why, the goal is easy, right? Any step, all the steps along the way are now much more manageable once you know why you want to do it. So back to me and my story, when I saw that picture, I knew I wanted to lose weight and get in shape and something had to change, right? But luckily for me at the time, my wife was pregnant. I knew I was about to have a kid. I knew I wanted to be an active dad, right? And I thought long and hard about it. That was my why. Like, I want to be an active dad. I want to be able to keep up with my kid. I want to be able to not get tired if they want to play. And so that driving why, combined with like the goal of losing weight, became really achievable. And all the hurdles and all the days that there was no motivation, and all the times I didn't feel like it, and all the times that, like, you know, I had setbacks or life came up, they were far more manageable because I knew why I wanted to get there. It's like, well, I want to be an active dad, so whatever it takes to get there. And that's like a really, for me, it was really emotional. And most whys should be pretty emotional and pretty like attached to like some sort of point that like really matters to you, because that's going to give you that foundation. People say just get motivated or use this as inspiration. Like, none of that matters, man. Inspiration and motivation are very fleeting. Like, they're cool for a couple of weeks, maybe. Like, look at New Year's resolutions. Statistically, people make it about 3 weeks before they're like, I don't want to do this anymore, right? Because that's just motivation, right? And, you know, if I only went to the gym when I was motivated, it wouldn't be that. I can tell you most days my alarm goes off in the morning. It's not motivation that gets me out of bed and get to the gym. It's the why, right? And, you know, now I get to be an active dad with my kid, and so I get to stay and live in that. And now I get to help others get there too. You know, and even if you don't have a kid, like, there's plenty of other reasons, right? Another really concrete why for me is I never want to be helped off a toilet in my old age, right? Like, super serious, like, that's a driving force for why I work out, right? I watched my great grandma spend like 13 years in a nursing home being helped in and out of beds. Like, to me, that doesn't look like a lot of fun, you know? And so, like, that could be your why, right? Like, and so, again, why is going to be very personal. Figuring that out is going to be, you know, your work to do. And that's why I put together that book. So that's just the basics of my background, right?
I think that motivation is fleeting is something that a lot of people feel guilty about, especially because most of us in this company have heard at least once in our life that we weren't living up to our potential. So if motivation isn't it, and my why is, how do I tell the difference?
So the way I would put it is a why is much a deeper internal feeling, right? A motivation is extrinsic, right? I'm motivated to go to the gym today because I'm in a good mood and I feel good and I have the energy, right? Whereas that intrinsic deep why, none of that external stuff matters. It doesn't matter if I'm tired. It doesn't matter if I don't feel like it. It doesn't matter if I didn't have a good day. I know why I want to go, and so I'm going to do the thing, right? And that's where, like, the difference is between intrinsic versus extrinsic. And like that, for me, that's how I define people. And like, it doesn't mean that like I go to the gym every single time. Like, I listen to my body. Like, there's definitely days where I'm like, oh, I don't feel good, and this is like, you know, a poor decision to go push it too far. But like, when it's just like I don't feel like it, or I'm not like, you know, up or in the mood, like, that's the why drives that.
And I think a lot of people have a difficult time figuring out whether or not they are actually listening to their bodies or if they are giving excuses. Because that's another thing we've heard a lot, is that we have a lot of excuses for why we didn't do something.
Yeah. And to be honest, it's going to take a little bit of practice, right? Like in the first couple of years of me getting into shape and getting into this whole lifestyle, there were plenty of justifiable reasons of like, oh, my back kind of hurts, or like, oh, I'm going to play it safe. And those are totally justifiable and reasonable. And I think the bigger problem for fitness and diet and nutrition and all these other things is that you see so many things for like lose 30 pounds in 30 days, or like whatever ridiculous claims like people tell you, right? And people get really frustrated when they don't see immediate results, or they don't see like drastic change like overnight. And like the way I like to phrase that is like, how long did it take you to build the habits to get to where you are now? It's probably going to take a fair amount of time to unbuild those habits, right? Like you didn't gain the weight overnight. You're not going to lose the weight overnight, right? You didn't, get out of shape overnight. You're not going to get in shape overnight, right? Like I have like great transformation pictures, but they're like 6 years apart. Like, and people all the time like, man, your transformation was so quick. I was like, no, it was 6 years. Like, I don't know, maybe you didn't see me that much in between then, but it's been 6 years. It's now been 8 years, but like, it took time. It's taken a lot of time, and it's taken a lot of effort, and it's taken, like I said, a lot of setbacks. I've had injuries, I've had to have surgeries, right? To take breaks on things. I've discovered my own issues like food allergies. But again, none of that really mattered because I knew why I was doing it, right? And like, going through the whole process with my son of getting him diagnosed. The diagnosis was severely autistic, right? And his issue was eloping, right? So how often I had to chase him and keep up with him and like run after him, and I was the only one who could keep up with him. Right?
Well, thank God for that, because eloping is a tough one.
Yeah, exactly. And like we get calls from the school, they're like, we can't physically restrain him. I'm like, well, somebody has to, right? Like, so it's been like, so that's a continual reason why I continue to be in shape and stay in shape, right? But like, I'm so grateful for the process now because I can be there and I can keep up with him and I can do that. And I know that his level of energy is matchable by me, right? And so again, all those days I don't feel like it, which is most of the time. I like going to the gym, which doesn't mean I like getting up early and doing it, right? Like the first 10 minutes of me being there, I'm just like half awake. And then I get moving, I'm like, oh, we're here. You know what I mean? Then I'm in the groove. But it's hard at first, right? I just picture him.
Okay, let's talk about that hard at first, because you say 6 years is how long it took, and I'm already throwing in the towel, Ryan.
Yeah.
I don't got the patience for that.
So, you have to think of it in a different terms as like aesthetics, right? Like modern medicine has done a really great job at increasing people's lifespan, right? We live 15, 20 years longer. We, extended our lifespan with current modern medicine, right? What we haven't extended is our health span, right? So those last 15, 20 years are really difficult for a lot of people. They lose mobility, they have trouble walking, they're told to just sit and just wait while they're, brought from place to place. That's the kind of thing that you want to start thinking about, right? Like aesthetics aside, like aesthetics are nice. It feels good to look nice and all those things and to lose weight, but like we want to be functional for the rest of our lives. We want to be able to like bend over and grab something off the ground. We want to be able to do our own grocery shopping as we age and to do basic maneuvers, right? Like I have multiple 80-year-old clients that are still functional and active and get, 18,000 steps in a day. One of them hiked, was it Mount Hood or Mount Shadow? One of the huge, like up to one of the lakes, like 10,000 feet elevation in her 80s. Like that was what we trained for a year, right? Those are the kind of things that like you still want to be able to do as you age. So like, yeah, when you say 6 years sounds like a lot, like it's really just about being functional for the rest of your life, right? It's not just about, oh, I'm going to work out till summer and look good for a vacation, like, which is, again, nice, reasonable goals. But like, think about the rest of your life. You know, this statistic I like to tell people is that, and I got this from my life insurance agent, the average American spends $187,000 on preventable medical expenses between the ages 62 and 82. $187,000. So if you just want to save some money by like working out half an hour a day, you're literally going to save thousands of dollars in medical expenses. You're also going to be functional. You're also going to be able to do the things you love for longer. So maybe that's your why. Maybe your why is you want to keep gardening, or maybe your why is that you want your hands to be functional enough to knit for the rest of your life, right? Like, those are the things that like matter. We work out to do the things we love. We change how we eat if we want to change how we want to look. Those don't have to necessarily go hand in hand. I have a couple clients that are runners, and they say like it's so they can drink beer regularly. Like, so they run all the time so they can drink, so they can, like, you know what I mean, not gain too much weight from drinking, which is a totally reasonable goal too. It really just kind of, again, finding that why you want to do this is going to help dictate how you want to do it. And like, sure, 6 years sounds like a lot up front, but you're also going to age those 6 years regardless. So where are you going to be in 6 years?
I met a man in his 80s once who said that he exercised an average of 3 hours a day. And that was what it took at 80 to stay in peak operating conditions. And I was like, well, I'm already losing. And he's like, no. That's it now. For me here in my 40s, it's not going to take 3 hours a day.
No, like, I'm on the extreme end. I'm someone who competes regularly and does high level stuff and like wins competitions. I do 90 minutes, 5 days a week. And that's on the extreme end, right? Like, you don't need to do all of that. Most of my clients, 2-3 times a week, maybe for an hour, 45 minutes, plenty. That's plenty, right? Data shows, they did a really long study in China with, I think, something like 10 or 20,000 participants over like a 10-year timeline. And it's really 20 or 30 minutes a day is going to increase your lifespan by about 15 years on average. 20 or 30 minutes a day of raised heart rate activity. So for a lot of people, that's like gardening, that's walking after dinner, that's kayaking, right? Like, you don't have to just pick up heavy circles and put them back down over and over again, right? You can literally do anything. I have a friend that picks up rocks. Like, he does the Dinny Stone lifts in Scotland. Like, he picks up rocks and he's extremely strong. Like, there's a million ways to stay active. My kid loves dance parties. I got him a trampoline in my living room and I put on dance music, and he just goes to town obsessively, which is great. He really likes metal. It's really funny. I come in, walk in the living room, and he's like 6, and he's like rocking out to metal the whole time. All right, cool. Good job.
So there's something there though, right? When we are young, moving our bodies is much easier and much more enjoyable because it is play. Exercise sucks because there's nothing playful about it. How do we bring that enjoyment back in?
So I treat exercise like play a lot of times. I would say like 2 out of 5 days a week. I don't even go with the program. I just go in with the intent of play. Like, I find something to move. I move in a unique pattern. I do something fun that I enjoy. You really can find most things that classify as play. I think a big part of being an adult nowadays, especially as someone who's neurodivergent, and like, we get so chastised for quote unquote playing or like not following the norm that we just don't anymore as adults. We're like, I try as much to play as possible, right? I try to find ways to have play in my life. I try to like reframe exercise as play, right? Like, it still can be play. You can still make it all about playing. Or you can just make it a task you check off the list, right? Like, that's up to you. And that's always like, again, why are you doing this? Like, if you just want to be active for the rest of your life, then just go and play tag with your kids. I take my kid to, there's like a rebound, it's called a Rebounders, it's a trampoline park. I try to go there like once or twice a month, and we just play tag until he can't stand. and he's just exhausted. And that's great. And I use that as a form of cardio, and it counts as my workout for the day, and it's amazing, right? Like, one of my friends does like competitive paintball, and like that keeps him in shape, right? They're like on a team that's like nationally rated, right? That's totally play. There's a million ways to go out and play. One of my really good friends does derby, roller derby. That's literally play. You don't have to stop playing. I think that's a big part of being neurodivergent, though, is we get like criticized for it. We're not taking things seriously, and so we get stuck in our head about it. So we're not allowed to ever have fun ever again, unless we're being productive. Like, can't tell you how often I fight that battle in my head. Like, just trying to relax, and my brain's like, "But you could be productive. But you have more potential. Like, stop, brain, stop."
And I think that there's really something there, that we have equated fitness and health as a box to check rather than enjoying being in our bodies. Because we've gotten into a lot of trouble for enjoying being in our bodies in the past. Or we don't understand them.
Yeah, like, we definitely don't, right? So I think a big part of that is just like learning how to move in your body again, learning how to enjoy your body, and learning like where you feel best, right? Like, I personally think humans are designed to move. I think sitting at a desk and sitting all day is really what's like so stress causing and causing so many issues with our body. And every chance I get, I try to get outside, get some sunlight, wander around, be more mindful, focus on like how I feel every day. And I can tell you, like, there was many years when I was doing the opposite. When I was a chef, I was very out of touch with my body, where I would just run into things, I would knock things off counters. I was very not attuned to how I feel. And I spent a lot of time just learning how to move in different directions and stretch and feel comfortable in every plane of motion. And one of the first things I tell clients is like, I'll have them try to squat. If they can't squat, I'll be like, one day you will. One day this will make sense. One day this will feel comfortable. One day you'll sit down in that squat position, just like all kids can do, and it'll feel fine. And I really love that recognition. Usually, like, sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's 2 years in, where a client will squat down comfortably, and I'll look at them and I'll be like, "Remember what I said on day one?" And they'll be like, sometimes it takes that. Some clients are hard-headed, and depending, especially like some of my own neurodivergent clients that are just struggle with like coordination and moving inside their body because they're so intellectual, it takes that extra effort. And learning that like this is the only body you have, unless science catches up real quick, that you're gonna have to start taking care of it at some point, right? And I didn't start till I turned 30. Wasn't an active person. I wasn't fit. I didn't start doing any of that till I was 30. Now I'm almost 40, and I'm in like the best shape of my life, and that continues to get better every year. And I have like a bunch of clients in their 50s that tell me they're in the best shape of their life for the same reason. We just worked at it for years, and they feel good. Now things make sense. Now they enjoy it. A lot of times there's this big curve too of like it feels like a chore and a challenge, and then eventually you get good at it, and you're like, "Oh, I like this." I know my flavor of neurodivergency is if I'm not immediately good at something, I get really frustrated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And learning to get past that is a challenge. And that's, again, where the why comes in. If you know why you're doing it, you can get okay with a little bit of frustration and being static, and being okay with not being immediately good at it. And it's interesting to watch it fold out with my 6-year-old, watch him get frustrated when something's not easy to do. It's okay, buddy, we gotta work at it. We gotta work at it for a long time, and eventually we're good at it.
And I think there's something there, Ryan, that because this is our body and I've had it for all of these years, I should just know already what I need to do to take care of it.
Sure. You should, probably. But I really feel like our society really pulls us out of that, really pulls us away from being self-aware, being really away from even understanding like what basic nutrition is. And if you look at like the market marketing around food and nutrition and exercise, it's always someone telling you that they know the secret way and that they're the one way that works. This diet's the perfect diet, and if you're doing anything else, you're wrong. And when you get all this information all the time being constantly bombarded at you, you're just like, well, I don't know, I'll just do whatever I feel is best. And if that was true, we'd probably all just get up away from our desk and run away, right? I was joking with clients about that. I'm like, oh, here's a perfect desk stretch. You stand up, you turn, and you just run off into the woods and never come back. That's probably better for your health than sitting at the desk all day. But a lot of us like to make money. So like you're caught in between those things, right? And how do you balance that? And it really doesn't have to be a ton of crazy work. You can work at a desk all day and still feel functional with a little bit of exercise. You know, maybe it's mindfulness and like meditation in the morning. Maybe it's not even, you know, lifting weights. Maybe it's just being in touch with yourself and learning how to breathe and move and like touch your toes again, right? Like, again, I spent a lot of time, a lot of years in my head and like very intellectual and very detached from my body. And once that like acceptance that like, this is my body, this is what I have to do with it, I have to figure something out that it likes, everything started to fall into place after that. And it was trial and error. It was, oh, well, this doesn't work, maybe I'll try that. Oh, this doesn't work, maybe I'll try that. Maybe I'll listen to this person, maybe they know what they're talking about. Maybe they don't, you know. A lot of times people can tell you a lot of different things, but it's gonna matter differently from person to person. And that's where the frustration comes. People are like, well, my friend lost 20 pounds doing this diet and I tried it and I didn't lose anything. I'm like, okay, cool, then that wasn't for you, right? And when I talk about diets to people, the diet that works is the one you stick to, not any specific magic formula.
I think, especially with health, there is always a sense that I have to vet my experts, right? Because there are so many potential choices. How do I decide what's the right path?
I think deciding what's the right path is one of those things where it's like you're gonna change. You're gonna think you found the right path, and it's gonna change once you figure it out. And as for like vetting professionals, most people know what they should or shouldn't be doing, right? Like when I talk to someone about food, I don't say, here's how you're gonna eat. I ask them, what are 3 things you would change about your diet? And they tell me, and we work on that, right? It's not rocket science. You know what I mean? Like we know that we should, if our goal is weight loss, for example, we should probably move more and eat less, right? Like, it's not magic, right? So when you're trying to vet a professional, look, the things that I would avoid is they tell you that there's one right way. If they tell you that other ways are wrong, and if they have had the same belief structure for 5+ years, you might want to question that because things change, right? Like data comes out all the time, and I've changed my opinions on a lot of things over the last 5 years because they will do new peer-reviewed studies, and I'll be like, oh, that's actually more correct, and that's more in line. And avoid people who identify with a style of either training or eating, because once it's their identity, it's really hard for them to like accept different opinions, different belief structures. The fact of the matter is if you like dancing and that's your form of movement, dance. If you like roller skating and that's your form of movement, do that. You don't have to take a certain class. You don't have to sweat really hard. You don't have to feel winded after every exercise. Most of the time, if you just walked 20 or 30 minutes a day, you'd probably be far better off than what you're at now than for not doing that. And chances are, if you ate more fruits and vegetables and less high calorie dense foods, usually like processed foods like, you know, takeout or fast food, you'd probably be better off. And it's really that simple. The problem is the accountability and the execution. So find someone you can be honest with, find someone you can be accountable, that you'll listen to and be accountable with, and find someone who doesn't tell you that there's only one way.
Okay, so this leads us to support, I think.
Mhm.
How likely is it that people are going to get healthy without a support network?
It's super unlikely, but it's unlikely you're going to do anything without a support network. So
Mm-hmm.
I always like to tell people too, I should have brought this at the beginning. I had 10 years sober, right? And that took an entire support group, right? And that was its whole own structure, and it was a support group, right? And I run a business, and I have networking groups, and I have a support group for that, right? Like, and I have, online employees and other people that help me and support me in that way, right? And so, of course, I would have a support network for like my health. I have a bodybuilding coach, I have a nutrition coach, I have, a couple other coaches that I talk to. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a professional, but it helps to have a professional because chances are you'll take it more seriously if you're hiring someone to take it seriously for you. Sometimes it can be your family, sometimes it can be your friends. If you tell your friends, hey, I'm working on losing weight, or I'm working on gaining weight, or I'm working on exercising more. Do you want to do this with me, or can you call me out on it or hold me accountable? Chances are they will. Chances are there's someone in your friend group who probably works out regularly, who would probably go to the gym with you. Chances are there's probably someone who eats differently than you do, who probably might have some good ideas. I always think you need community support for everything. Again, I think that's something our society is lacking drastically. I think this weird, hyper individualized independence of like I can do it all myself is holding us back. And it held me back for a lot of years of being like, well, I know what's best, so I can do it right. When in reality, it wasn't, right? In reality, asking for help has been the best strength I can have, right? So whether it's community support from friends and family, whether it's someone really close to you, whether it's someone in your already sphere that you've talked to, those are great places to reach out to.
And this is important over the long term too, because if my why isn't going to get me there every day, then I need someone else to get me there every day, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So like part of that too is like having someone to hold you accountable is always going to make you more likely to do it. When you tell someone what your plan is and what your goal are, this data shows that you're much more likely to actually do it because now you've told someone you're going to do it. So you're much more likely to commit to it. That doesn't mean you walk around telling everybody like, hey, I do CrossFit. Did you know? Like, that's cool. You know what I mean? But there definitely was like periods when I first started weightlifting that I talked about all the time because I was proud of it. Like, hey, I deadlifted this much today, or hey, we were at the gym today, right? That became part of my life, but there was a big part of it in the beginning where I was super proud of it. I told as many people as I could, and I talked about it all the time, and that helped me because I was accountable about it. A lot of times, it's really hard for people to ask for help, right? So that's why they're on Instagram or on social media, listening to other people talk because they're hoping that they can just get like an ounce of that inspiration or motivation. And maybe that'll be the key to change their life. Which maybe for some people it is, right? Maybe they might see a video or, they might be really inspired by like something they see and do the work. But a lot of times that's just the starting point. A lot of times that's the point where they can now feel comfortable asking for help and know that it's time to change and they need help and they need to do something. And like, that's exactly what I did. I just sought out the, most in shape person in my friend group. And I was like, do you go to the gym? And he was like, yeah, all the time. I was like, can I come? And it was great. And I got started. And he taught me a lot of things that in hindsight probably weren't great, but it was what he knew. And that's what allowed me to learn and like become a teacher and teach others, become a coach and help people. So I try to offer as many resources as possible. I'm always the kind of person that if someone reaches out and asks me questions about fitness, I will talk about it endlessly. And people always think, oh, I know you're not at work. I don't want to ask you anything. I'm like, oh, I don't care. I like this stuff. I would talk about this regardless. My wife laughs at me. We'll be at like social functions or like friends' houses or something, and she'll come up and we're just talking about like nutrition or fitness, and she's like, oh, and it just wanders off. She doesn't care.
And at at the same time, I don't think you have to have that kind of passion to be healthy and get in shape, right?
No, most people don't. I just like to hyper obsess about things, and that's become my lifestyle for the past 8 years, right? Uh, but I also like do it for a living, so it's more like a lot of times it is just finding something you enjoy doing. Like I guarantee you, there's like soccer leagues for regardless of whatever age you are. Pickleball is a good thing nowadays, regardless of whatever age you are. It's the fastest growing sport in America. I know there's like a parkour gym that like some of my friends have gotten into nearby where they just like want to jump off things, which sounds great. Like it doesn't have to be the one size fits all. And I want to like stress that to everybody. It's like whatever your flavor of movement is, that's great. And that's the way to do it. And that's the way to lean into it. And it doesn't have to be black or white. It doesn't have to be in that overcrowded gym with blaring music. It can be literally anything. I had one friend that was like, he had this little route where he would run the park and like hop on the curb and then jump on the bench and then do a couple laps doing that. And that was his form of fitness because he didn't like loud noises and big crowds. So the gym always frustrated him, right? And that's the reason I get up really early to the gym. Like, I'm not a morning person. I'm not a fan of mornings. I don't like it when my alarm goes off at 4:30 in the morning. But the empty gym is really nice. It's really nice when I get there in the morning and there's like 5 other people in the entire gym, And so for me, that's a big driving factor. I can get more done. I can get more focused. People aren't emailing me or texting me or checking with me yet, and get everything done before people start distracting me. Because I'm very easily distracted. Right? If I'm doing something and someone asks me something, I'll just start doing that now, So find what works for you is always the answer. Find what works for you. Find what you enjoy. Start there. Like, yes, you should have a why about why you want to get in shape. And that's going to get you started. But find something you enjoy because you're much more likely to keep doing that if you enjoy it, right? Like my friend who does derby, she got really into derby. Then she started lifting weights because she wanted to get better at derby. Not the other way around. She wanted to get stronger. Now she's playing on like a high level team. So she started lifting regularly so she can get better at derby, like her fun time passion. Move more.
Yeah. And I think that at the end of the day, for so many of us, it's the overcomplication of it. I have to have an elaborate fitness routine, and I have to have these 12 bullet points that I got to tick off as I did or didn't eat this shit today.
Mm-hmm.
But we're making it too hard.
Yeah, all the time. And I find myself falling into that and being guilty of all those things too. But for the most part, like let's take diet, for example. If you just ate more whole foods, you would be far better off. And when I say a whole food, the fact that some people get confused about that is indicative of like how marketing is around food, right? Like, so a whole food is something that doesn't have an ingredient list on it, which would be, chicken, rice, broccoli, fruit. Like they don't have an ingredient list on it because they don't need it, right? And if 80% of your diet was whole food and 20% of your diet was, I don't know, stuff you like, you would probably be far better off health-wise and you'd probably lose weight and you probably feel full longer. And it's a really easy way to not overcomplicate it and not have to track everything and measure everything and do everything to actually feel better every day in life. I know that for me, once I stopped eating like gluten and dairy, I just started dropping tons of weight, right? And a lot of people have underlying food allergies, and that's why you see things like keto or Atkins or paleo diets be so effective. It's not necessarily because of the mechanism, which is like how you eat, but the fact that someone had some sort of underlying inflammation or allergy that once they took that food group out of their diet, they suddenly got feeling better. So it's not really about the complications, which is part of our problem with being neurodivergent is to get that obsessive, hyper-focused, like it has to be perfect, I have to do this 10 right things, otherwise it's not right. But for the most part, if you just snuck in 10 extra minutes of movement like every couple hours, if you focused on whole foods more often, and maybe ate out a couple less times a week, you'd probably be reaching your goals sooner than you think. And that's where we need to start. The all or nothing mindset stops a lot of us. It stops a lot of us in a lot of our passions. I know that like for years I was like, oh, well, I'm not good at singing because someone once told me I was tone deaf, so I'm never going to do it again, even though I enjoy it, right? I can't make money at it, so I'm obviously never going to be good at it, right? Like once I stopped that whole mindset and just started singing in my car with my kid, I don't care if it's off key. I don't care if it matters. I enjoy it, right? You know, and that's the same way we want to take like exercise and movement. It's like whatever you enjoy doing, do more of that. Say when you were a kid, you really enjoyed riding your scooter around. Go get a helmet and get a scooter again. Like, I don't know, man, it doesn't need to be complicated, except being weird and wandering around and just doing things and having fun with it.
Speaking of singing, 30 minutes of choral activity is the same as lifting weights for 30 minutes because you're using your lungs, you're expanding your diaphragm. It's about moving and using your body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to use this series as a kind of, I want to create some way stations. How do we start? We're going to download the workbook. We're going to define our why. What's the first thing that we do?
So after you figure out your why, you start to set some goals, right? And the goal should be like a little uncomfortable, right? And then you can kind of start to break it down from there. And so, you know, my first goal was to be in what's called the 1,000-pound club, right? Which is like between the squat, bench, and deadlift, lift over 1,000 pounds. It took me a couple of years to get there, but it was like the first goal that I decided, right? And maybe that's not your, like, it doesn't have to be that, it has to be your goal, but having a goal in mind, now you can start to break down the steps to get there, right? Just like any other goal you have in life. And personally, I like them to be a little bit scary goals. They should be a little uncomfortable, right? The one caveat to that is they shouldn't be necessarily like say it's weight loss. It shouldn't be lose 100 pounds. Like a very specific thing isn't the best idea. But maybe it's fitting into those clothes that you haven't got rid of. That's a great goal. That's a realistic goal, you know? Say you want to do a marathon. I wouldn't put that as your first goal. I would start with a 5K, right? Like, be uncomfortable, but also be reasonable, right? And then from there, we kind of break it down into different things. And I think number one would be to figure out your goal. Number two is going to be find community support. Number three is going to be share your goal with your community. So now you have to be accountable. And then number four is break it down into action steps, right? And then from there, we can kind of get to more of the nitty-gritty and the more specifics, like what is a diet? What is exercise? How do we define movement every day? What is good versus what is better? I don't even like to say that. Like, what is good versus what is better, right? And that's the same way I talk about food is like, what is, like, some food's nutritious and some food's more nutritious. There's not, all food is nutritious. Then we can kind of start to break down some stigmas. I think the next step we have to break down stigmas. Like, I don't like the terms, healthy food or unhealthy food. Like, food is all food. There's food that aligns with your goals and there's food that doesn't align with your goals. Regardless, you're going to eat. That's the answer, right? And if your mom's home cooked meal that brings you, happiness and feels like home and that you're never going to skip isn't necessarily aligned with your goals, that's fine. Eat the food. Don't suffer. You don't have to suffer like that every day.
So, balance and moderation, how dare you?
I know. Which is funny. I talk about this a lot with people, but I'm in the middle of competition season, which will be totally unmanageable.
Okay.
When you talk about balance and moderation, that's when you start talking about like realistic long-term goals. When I say do something in moderation for 6 years, it's way more palatable than I say do something extreme for 6 years, you know? And like, as someone who was a chef for 14 years, I don't believe in eating flavorless cardboard to be healthy. Like, I believe in eating tasty food covered in seasonings with some sauces that feel good, that still align with my goals.
Yeah, and I think that's important that we are aligning the goal with the why so that there is a reason, because we need reasons.
Yes.
We're not going to do your arbitrary thing because you told us to, even if we're the ones that told us to. It's not going to happen.
No, that's exactly why you have that why, you know?
I like this. We're going to have a checklist, y'all. When we are done with this show, I'm going to have some bullet points you can knock off. So again, we're starting episode 1 by identifying your why, identifying your community, acknowledging what your goals are, and then having people help you hold you accountable for them.
Yes, 100%. And all of this is actually in the workbook. All these steps are in the workbook too. So
amazing, which we will have in the show notes. We'll give you all of the information so that you can access that. This is going to be fun, Ryan. I am looking forward to this.
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, so tell people what's coming. What are we going to do for the rest of this series?
So for the rest of the series, like I said, we're going to start breaking this stuff down. So first, like I said, we're figuring out this why, acknowledging community support. The next thing we're going to talk about, like, goal setting and like what a SMART goal is, right? Specific, manageable, achievable, realistic, and on a timeline. And so we'll start breaking that down. Then we'll start talking about how to build community support and how to ask for community support. And if you don't necessarily have easily accessible community, how to reach out and how to find people and how to find people that relate to you. Then we'll start breaking down some of the more nitty gritty stuff, like what is a diet? I think we'll have a whole episode about that. Like, what is diet? What does that mean? Then we'll start breaking down stuff about what is movement and what is best for your body and how to listen to your body in a way that's manageable, right? Like, because if we feel challenged and we feel like we're struggling in our body, we got to figure out what that listening to our body means. And then from there, we'll start breaking down more and more steps. I think we'll start to break down, like, you know, the term macros gets thrown around a lot. People don't really understand what macronutrients are. So I think that'll be a whole top list. Is like, what's protein? What is a carb? What is a fat? What do they do for us? Why do we use them? Right? Then we'll talk about like building muscle and why that's so important. For many reasons, like between weight loss and staying functional and staying active. And then from there, we'll kind of bring a full picture and talk about like how to design a program that works best around your lifestyle and how to figure out what that looks like for you. But if you work 12 hours a day, have kids, and are stressed out all the time, me telling you to work out 60 minutes a day, 5 days a week isn't realistic. But if I told you that, like, if you got up for 5 minutes every other hour and moved would really help you, that might be what's manageable. And so figuring out how to design a program that works for your lifestyle. And then from there, we'll talk about like what are food allergies, what do some people avoid, what are best, you know what I mean? And we can kind of talk about like the different styles of diets that people like to ask about, like paleo, keto, vegan. And pro tip, they're all just mechanisms to help you reach your goal. There is no one right answer.
Finally, if you'd like to just skip ahead, how can they work with you, Ryan? How can they find you and do this work?
Reach out to me. Yeah, so they can always reach out to me. So we can go to spikefitness.com. You can I have a membership site there, so I have community support there, and we do live weekly coaching calls, and that's where I help people get started. It's $1 for the first 14 days, and then it's $19 a month, and that's where we like to get started. And we release monthly recipe books, monthly meal plans, monthly shopping lists, workout guides, workout videos. You can also reach out to me directly from there. Go to spikefitness.com, get all of my email content. It's ryan@spikefitness.com, and you can message me directly, and we can set up a call, set up a one-on-one consultation, and talk further and talk about reaching your goals.
This has been amazing. Thank you for being here today. We will see you all again next time, and hopefully we'll be able to make this whole thing feel easier for you, because that is the goal.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Have an amazing day. Bye.